Now, I'm going to read the opening few paragraphs of a column I came across in the website Brash Bassett Hyde on Thursday or Friday, I think it was, 4 days ago. It's a column we're going to republish with permission on the platform opinions page. And I'll just read the first 4 paragraphs, and you'll get the idea why I became very, very interested in this story. $30 billion is a mind-boggling amount of money. That sum could buy dozens of new kindergartens or police stations or whole hospitals with medical schools. It could eliminate poverty or overhaul our decrepit education system. It could way overfund the National Party's tax cuts for decades. It could even fund New Zealand's yawning infrastructure deficit. Instead, the Ardern government in 2021 offered to donate this gargantuan sum to the acquisition of international carbon credits as part of its 2021 to 30 nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement on climate change. I use the word donate advisedly because the offer was entirely voluntary and because New Zealand taxpayers receive nothing tangible in return. Ideology and ministerial self-interest were the only winners. Now, I think that is one of the most stunning openings to any article on politics I have ever read. And the author of that piece is Barry Brill, former politician, and it would be fair to say now someone aligned with the energy industry. Barry Brill joins us now. Barry, thank you for taking the time and thank you for the column.
Oh, good morning.
Barry, how would you describe yourself now?
Well, I'm retired. I take an active interest in climate science. I'm the chairman of the Climate Science Coalition.
All right.
For New Zealand.
Okay, I have to ask this disclaimer, and if you're completely confused by the question, I don't hold it against you. Are you or have you ever been part of anything called the Atlas Network?
No, I've heard of the Atlas Network. I've never been a part of it.
I'm not sure it exists. It may just be a rumour, Barry. I just wanted to clear that up. Look, firstly, and I want to keep this simple because you've written a long piece and I know you've gone into detail. Are you telling me that this government or this country is paying $30 billion to buy carbon credits that we don't have to?
Yes. I'm saying exactly that. We signed up to the Paris Agreement in 2015, where we agreed to make contributions to the reduction of global emissions. These are called nationally determined contributions because they are voluntary, because it's the task of each country to decide how much of a contribution it can make. Now, what has always been the position is that you look inwards, you look at your own country and see just how much economic pain you can bear in order to make as big a contribution as you can. They use the term to be as ambitious as you can in contributing to global reductions. Now, in the case of New Zealand, for the first major NDC for the Paris Agreement, which was for the period 2020 to 2030, 2021 to 2030, the New Zealand Climate Commission, which is required to do carbon budgets for the country. So they did a full study of what was the most ambitious that New Zealand could afford to be. And they came up with a figure of 47 million tonnes of reduced emissions over
which is equivalent to how much money?
That would be equivalent to about probably equivalent to about $7 billion, $7 or $8 billion, but it isn't an expenditure that the government makes. It's a It's a tax, the ETS tax on energy, and it's a range of other policies which.
Okay, so when you say we committed to spend, in this instance, the $30 billion, it is not out of the government's coffers. It is that we will raise $30 billion by a variety of taxes and other methods.
Well, no, in regard to our domestic savings, they will be paid for by and large by New Zealand citizens under regulations and requirements imposed by the government. But on top of the domestic savings, for reasons which are not clear, the government has also decided to spend $30 billion in buying credits
on the international market. Okay.
On the international market during the period from 2021 to 2030.
Do we know how much they've spent so far on that very generous act of altruism?
As I understand it, there's been no expenditure so far. There is no international market so far. The Climate Commission, in fact, believes there won't be any international.
So we're never going to have to pay this $30 billion, Barry?
Well, if there isn't a market, we have to create our own. And in the 2022 budget, Robertson set aside $9 million to pay for a search for opportunities around the world where we might be able to spend the money not on a market, but just on buying credits for people buying trees and that sort of thing.
But let's be honest, Barry, why these are big figures, and it reads, well, we haven't spent a cent on this $30 billion commitment. Is it included in the government's finances, in our books, in our budget as a liability?
Well, it's noted as a future liability. The budget stretches out 4 years ahead, and because this is an expenditure that has to be made between 2021 and 2030, it doesn't have to be made until 2030, so it doesn't have to appear in our budget.
Okay, so in fact, Barry, we're not actually spending 30. We haven't spent a dime yet on this promise.
No, we haven't spent a dime yet on the promise.
Okay. So all we need then is the current government to say we're not going to, and because we're not legally required to. The other thing I thought was amazing about your story, this promise, this commitment was made when Parliament couldn't even meet to discuss it, and we were in the middle of the COVID pandemic, wasn't it?
It was. COVID had prevented Parliament from discussing it, but it wasn't even discussed at any other level either. It was a group of people going into a cabinet meeting and coming out with a huge number, which was more than double the amount that had been recommended by the New Zealand Climate Commission, and indeed it was even more than had been recommended by Minister James Shaw. Or the Treasury or any other of our
But it's easy to make a promise you're never going to have to keep, or that someone else is going to have to keep for you, isn't it, Barry?
Yes, it is, but other countries will try to hold us to this. And I believe it's important that we do what you just said, that the new government should come out as soon as possible and say, sorry, we're not going to be able to honour this donation. We just can't afford it. It wasn't our idea, and we'll repudiate.
And it was never actually put through a democratic process to make the promise, was it?
Well, they may decide to use that argument, and I hope they do.
Yeah.